This is kind of a cheap and easy way to start out making plushies. Oh,
As you drop the needle.
As I drop my needle. Luckily, it's a big boy, so maybe we can find it without, you know.
So while we're off to a great start.
Off to a wonderful start.
Thanks everyone for tuning in for Furry Migration. This is Bluefire.
Hi guys.
Bluefire, and I know nothing about this, so I'm just here to kind of learn. Bluefire is going to make some plushies using actually pretty accessible things that you probably have around the house.
Yeah, sometimes the socks are a little bit hard to find, but around the holidays they tend to come out all over the place, and they tend to be pretty cheap. You can get them at, like, oftentimes dollar stores and in multiple colors and patterns and stuff. I chose some blank ones just because they're easy to start with.
These are really fuzzy socks. Does it matter what kind of sock you use?
You can use normal socks. You can use really any material, but this material is nice because it's really stretchy. It's fuzzy, so the fuzziness will hide stitches. And the shape of them means that down the sides here, that's 2 seams you don't have to make because it's already tube shaped.
Sure.
So it's a little bit easier in some cases to make things.
Okay.
So basic supplies you need for this are the socks you're going to use, some thread. You can either use all-purpose thread or embroidery floss will also work. This is maybe a little bit overkill, but you could split these 6 strands down into smaller strands.
Sure.
But
so is this the embroidery?
Yeah, this is embroidery floss. This is useful for things like making the face or features like whiskers, things like that.
So this is less so to hold things together and more so for like
decorative.
Okay, gotcha.
Buttons are always a good thing. They can be decoration, they can be eyes, but you can also make faces with markers or any kind of thing like that. I've got some markers both for drawing faces, but also for marking out where we want to sew. Okay. Marking lines will make it a little bit easier to see what we're doing while we're doing it.
Gotcha. So it seems like most of this stuff you can just get at any crafts or hobby store.
You can actually get a lot of these at places like CVS or Walgreens because they have sewing kits that'll have thread and needles in them and scissors, and you can get the socks usually there. Or places like that.
Sure.
The embroidery thread maybe not, but they should have markers and scissors and all that other stuff.
Okay, cool. So where do we start?
Okay. So the first one we're going to start with,
I guess you will be doing that one and I'll be following along with my pink sock.
Yeah. So we're going to start by turning it inside out.
Completely?
Yeah. There's not a huge difference between the fur on the inside and outside.
Sure.
But it's kind of useful to start out this way, especially because there's like a seam at the toes and usually at the toes.
Because it's a sock, it's a tube, so there's only one seam, right? Okay.
So we'll start with the marker, buttons. Because we don't need those right now.
So while everyone's stuck at home, this could be a fun thing to do if you're friends on Discord. Everyone kind of gets something together and makes these together if you can't be in person with them.
Get a voice call, start something.
Yeah.
They can be fun gifts to make, fun things just to work on. There's a lot of different things that you can do with them. They can be really simple, which is what we're going to do today, is something pretty simple.
Sure.
Or they can be really complex as you sew. Cut pieces out, sew them on, make all kinds of things. Okay. So I think what we're going to start with is fold your sock in half so that the heel is sticking up.
Got it.
Okay, so we're going to start probably this direction. I think it'd be easiest if you want to fold your
heel.
Yeah, heel down. So what we're going to do is this is going to form like the butt of the plushie.
Okay.
Okay? So when they're sitting, be sitting kind of like
okay.
that.
Yeah, that helps visualize it a bit. Got it.
From here, what we're going to do is draw a couple of legs. So this, and just some rounded, couple of finger widths of legs on there.
You gave me the pink marker on the pink sock.
Do you want the blue marker?
Maybe.
Here.
See a little bit better.
sometimes it's good to have a color you can see, but I've noticed that if you're not careful, sometimes it'll show on the other side.
Gotcha.
Which is why I gave you the pink one, because maybe you can see it without it showing.
Okay, well here, you know what? Let's try it again. And now you think.
If it's not contrasting enough, I can give you the other one.
That's fine. So when you finish this, does washing it do anything to help with, like, if you're using a color that doesn't contrast well with it?
It depends on what you use. Some sewing has like washable markers that you can use if you really want to get into it. But I wouldn't suggest washing these. Mm-hmm. I probably also wouldn't suggest giving them to very young children.
Okay.
Because these are more decorative. You're making them by hand. So once we have that, we're going to need our needle. I almost dropped it again.
Yeah.
See that? So I'll give you this one. Gonna have to be careful with it because it's small, and if you drop it, we will not find it.
And you will step on it.
Probably.
Got it. Okay.
So it's important if you're just starting out to maybe like get something that you can stick your needle into. Mm-hmm. Either magnets will hold on to them, or a pin cushion like this.
Yeah.
You can do that. But just be careful, especially with that tiny needle, that you don't lose it inside the sock.
Yeah, okay.
Or forget that it's there.
Yep.
So we're going to need some thread. We're going to just use black and white because they'll show up well, and we'll hide it inside the sock.
Okay.
But it's a good idea to use thread that's the same color as your sock if you can, because it's less likely to show up.
Okay.
But to show up on the camera, I'm going to use black.
There you go.
So, with a needle, we'll see if the camera can see that. There's the sharp end, and then there's the eye at the other end. You're going to want to feed your needle through that eye. If you have trouble with it, a really common thing to do is to just wet the end so it sticks together. Mm-hmm. And then you feed it through the eye, like that.
That's a good trick with the wetting it because, first try.
First try. You're a pro already.
I was just about to say, whenever I've sewn in the past, that's always been kind of the tricky part, is getting it through the eye.
There are also needle threaders. I don't think I have one. Maybe I do. Nope. You're SOL. But there are needle threaders, which are usually little pieces with like a wire loop on the end.
Yeah.
So it's a lot easier to feed the wire loop through the eye of the needle. And then when you pull it back through, it'll pull the thread through the needle.
Got it. Cool.
So then you're going to want a decent amount of thread, just so that you don't have to stop and start, enough to do the whole thing.
Yep.
Or at least the part we're doing. So this is about like 2 feet. Yeah. Okay. Something like that.
Yeah.
The longer you make the thread, the more likely it'll tangle while you're working.
So you don't want too much, but you don't want too little.
If you have too little, you'll have to stop, make a knot, get another thread, knot it. It'll be annoying.
So cut it off?
So yeah, go ahead and cut it off. I like to double my thread over. It's a little bit easier, I find, to work with, and it's a little bit stronger because it's 2 pieces of thread.
Sure.
And then with the ends together, just make a double knot at that end.
Got it.
So there's all kinds of fancy tricks to doing those knots, but I've never gotten any of them to work for me, so I just do it the old-fashioned way.
I also figured this would be a good time to mention, if anyone wants to follow along and they're watching it live, this will be posted on YouTube later. So if you ever want to watch it again, I'm sure we'll post it somewhere on the FM website so you can follow along once you have the materials.
Mm-hmm. It's also pretty easy to find crafts like this on YouTube.
Sure.
Usually they're like budget crafts or budget plushes or something like that. So we're going to sew along this line that we drew from one side to the other.
Okay.
To start out, I like to put my needle through, and then before I pull the thread all the way through, I slide my needle through the loop right below the knot.
Oh.
So what that does, this material is very stretchy, so your knot will most likely pull through, which is kind of a pain.
Yeah.
You can't make a knot big enough to stay in this kind of fabric. Normal fabric, maybe. But this way, it's nice and secured and anchored in your fabric.
Okay.
Got it?
Yep.
Okay. So the stitch we're going to do is a really strong stitch called a back stitch.
Okay.
Normally, and a lot of people will probably be familiar, sewing is like down and up and down and up, and you just go all the way around, right?
That's called the back stitch, or that's...
No.
Oh, okay.
That's the stitch most people are probably familiar with when they think of sewing.
Okay.
But that's called a running stitch, and it's useful. But for something like this, what we're going to do is come up a little bit forward of where we put that knot.
Sure.
Pull the thread all the way through.
So I'm coming out the top right now, is that right?
That's fine.
Come back down and under.
Mm-hmm.
So it comes all the way through?
Yep.
Okay. I can see what you mean by the tangling thing.
Mm-hmm. It won't be as big a deal with these because they hide mistakes pretty well, and
Sure.
it'll be on the inside. So then what makes this a back stitch is we're going to go back a little bit towards our knot
Interesting.
and
okay.
go back down.
Does this do something for reinforcement, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's part of why it's a stronger stitch is the way you go back and forth with the stitches.
Okay.
So you'll go forward a little bit and
back.
up, and then back a little bit and down.
And repeat.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And you do that for, I'm assuming, the full...
Yes, all the way to the other side.
Got it. Now, does it matter how much distance you have between your stitches? I guess with the back stitch, it doesn't matter a ton.
Typically, it's better to make your stitches as small as possible and as like neat and even as possible. But the nice thing about this particular fabric is it hides a lot of it. So it's okay if they're not straight or they're not even. But the smaller you can make them and the more even you can make them, the better.
Got it.
And with plushes, there'll be stuffing inside. So if the stitches are too big, you might risk having stuffing come out.
Sure.
Depending on what you use. I'm going to go pretty loose with this. My needle's pretty big. And the line we drew helps us keep track of where we're going with the stitching.
Yeah, I couldn't imagine doing this without that line.
So, up from the front, then move back a little bit and go back down through the fabric. Pull it all the way through. This is a case where having a contrasting thread might be useful.
Sure.
Because you can see the stitches you've done.
Yep.
Move forward a little bit and go up. Move back a little bit and go down. These will form the little legs of our plush. And with the heel, it'll be able to sit up. Mostly. If you make the head too big and heavy, it'll still fall over.
Got it.
if your thread starts to get tangled, you can take a little time and just let it unwind. I feel like while I'm stitching, I twist my needle.
Is there any other tips or common mistakes people make while stitching that you may have tips on? Tricks?
Make sure you remember what side you're working on. I've had moments where I go to take a stitch and I wrap around to the other side and I forget that I'm in the wrong side.
Yeah.
Keeping an eye on your thread, because if it gets tangled, you'll get a big knot and a bunch of wasted thread. When you get done, make sure you tie it off securely so that it doesn't come undone. You also don't have to pull very hard on this. If you pull too hard, it might bunch up the fabric.
Yeah.
You want it nice and taut and secure, but it doesn't have to be too tight.
Pretty much right here at the end.
I've been going a little bit slower.
Yeah, I think I went a little bit wide on a few of these, but I'm sure that's probably
okay.
right.
That's alright, no worries.
It's definitely been a little bit taut, making sure it's not too tight so it doesn't bunch up, like you said. No! You're knock over the table.
So what I'm going to do to finish it off, because there's a little bit of extra fabric here, is I'm going to come around from the back to the front, go down through my fabric, and then I'm going to run my needle through this loop I created.
Sure.
Kind of making a knot. And that'll close off the rest of the fabric right there and make a nice secure knot. You can also go from the back to the front, and then slip your needle through that loop, pull it nice and tight. Then you can clip your thread. Okay. Just so we don't lose it.
Yep.
So then what you can do is cut off this excess fabric. Just be careful not to get too close to your stitches and accidentally cut them.
Yeah, that would be unfortunate.
So I'm leaving maybe like 1/4 of an inch. And make a cut down the center for my legs. So now I got little leggies. Might trim off some excess. Okay. Okay, and we're also going to cut off the toe of the sock so that we have a place where we can stuff the body.
Sure.
So you want to decide about how long you want the body to be. I'm going to cut mine probably around here-ish. 2/3 of the way to the toe, I think. And then this little extra bits you want to hold on to because you can turn them into extras that you can put little attachments for your...
Little accessories, like a little beanie cap.
Yeah, it could be a beanie cap.
It'd be really good to save if you do more of these, then you'll have a different color for a different one.
Yep.
You did, actually, while we're on the topic of patterns, you did mention that you can be a little bit more creative with different patterns of sock, right?
Yeah. So you notice that this sock here is pretty plain.
Yep.
Mine has toes and heels.
Mm-hmm.
So my little plush is going to have a gray bottom on it.
Mm-hmm.
If you have pattern socks, like these ones here, this one has a nice animal print. So you've already got your spots.
Mm-hmm.
Or this one with the little spots on it could be a really cute owl.
Sure.
Or the snow decorations up here would be really nice for like around the body of another animal.
Yep.
So you can get really creative either with plain or with patterned and find different ways to use those.
Sure.
Okay, so now we're going to turn our socks right side out.
Right
Tuck all that stitching inside. Want to make sure you push out the legs so they're out all the way.
This is the moment where you find out if your stitching was strong enough or not.
It'll also make a little bit of a mess. Sometimes the fuzzies fall out.
Yeah, I noticed that.
All right, you want to grab the stuffing over there?
Sure.
We're going to grab a small handful for each of the legs. Here, you want to put it between us?
Yeah, here.
So, these socks can take a surprising amount of stuffing. They're very stretchy.
No.
This might seem like an awful lot,
Sure.
but you should be able to get quite a lot of this into those little legs.
So I'm assuming you can either go out and buy polyfill by the box, or in your case, get a cheap or unused pillow.
Yes.
And you pre-purpose that.
Okay, I didn't need that whole big thing, but
Gotcha.
that amount I grabbed will stuff both of my legs. So these are too simple for it, but in some cases, how you stuff it can change the shape of what you're making.
Sure.
So if you say make a big ball down here and then a bigger ball up here, you'll get something kind of bean shaped.
Yeah.
So once you've stuffed the legs, you can go ahead and stuff the body. You can see starting to get a little bit of a
shape.
pudgy shape.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was laughing at earlier, is just watching all the legs plump out as you put this fill in. It's kind of funny.
And the 3 fingers that I used for my legs, they end up not looking very long. So if you want longer legs and not short little beans like I've got, you'll want to make them a little bit longer than we did.
The other thing I was noticing is with these little feet, you probably can make little Among Us little characters.
Yes, I have seen where they've used these to make Among Us characters. Because you could sew the top shut, make a little square, say, out of your leftover for the backpack.
Yeah.
Be a little Among Us character. So I'm going to put some more in mine. I want it to be a little bit taller. Okay. There we go.
And the nice thing about the socks being so stretchy is you're not limited by how tight the sock might be. Because it stretches a little bit, so it gives you a little bit of kind of a...
Yeah.
Yeah.
And with these things, you can kind of change the shape by how you squish them.
Yeah, I've noticed that depending on how you stuff this will depend, like I have a lump on the side here, I can kind of...
Yeah. I mean...
That wasn't me, that was the dog, I swear.
Even more than that. So yours is really long right now. If you pack it down, you get something shorter and fatter.
Yeah.
But even then, you can fluff it back up to something taller.
And if it's too fat, I probably can always remove a little bit more.
Yep, you can remove some if you want. I like mine nice and fat. It'll be very roly-poly. Got it stuffed nice and full. Okay, so now we're going to close up the top here.
Okay.
So we're going to need our needle and thread.
Uh-oh, I need more.
Yes. I think this might work okay for me. You might want a bit more than this, more like the foot range again, but I think this will be okay.
And they're kind of the same as the legs. You kind of double back and tie it so you have a double thread.
Yep.
Okay.
Having the double thread on this also allows you to slip through the loop and make a nice secure knot. With a single thread, you'd probably have to tie a knot around the fabric.
Got it.
Oops, I got my knot a little bit too low. Just undo that and fix it. There we go.
Frame here.
Yep, you can always trim it down if the end gets too rough. The nice thing about a pin cushion is when you put your needle in, you can put it straight up and down. So, like when Rico was having trouble getting it off the edge of the table, you can just pull it right out of your pin cushion. You don't risk dropping it.
Yeah, that's a good point. And losing it in shaggy carpet.
I've done that. It's not fun.
Okay. Took a while, but I made it.
Yeah.
So that's what you think a good amount right there?
Yeah.
I'm actually gonna
Yeah.
utilize the resources that I can get.
I have a bunch of pins and excess thread stuck on there, but I often have like leftover bits when I'm done sewing, and I like to save them so I can use them for something else and not waste it. My dog's pushing on the table.
Dog wants attention.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool.
Always.
Great. So now we do
All right.
the top.
So, go through your fabric. It doesn't matter if it's front to back or whatever. And then pull it through your thread again. Go through the loop of your thread. Separate the two strands.
Actually, I'm seeing a recurring theme here.
Mm-hmm. It's just a nice way to start out your knot. Nice and secure, so you don't lose it.
Yeah. Oh my god, I went through it after the knot, which doesn't do any good. There you go. Ooh. Okay.
If you have a lot of excess thread, you might want to trim this off.
At the end there.
Yeah, the part that's after your knot. You might want to trim it down a little bit.
Where's the knot? There it is.
Just so it doesn't stick out at the end and show.
Makes sense. Nice and clean. There we go.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So this time what we're going to do is the running stitch. And that'll be going in, and then out, and then in, and then out.
Okay.
And we're going to do this all the way around the edge until we're back to where we started.
Gotcha.
Because what that'll let us do is we can pull on it, and it'll pull all this together like a purse string.
Okay.
So, start from whichever side you want, and we'll go in, and then back out. These don't have to be close stitches. They can be pretty wide because you're going to pull it tight.
Gotcha.
And it really doesn't matter what they look like. You'll want, depending on how big you want the body to be, will kind of tell you how far down you want to start stitching.
Sure.
Because if you have a lot of excess fabric and you want a smaller body, then just start lower and cut off the excess fabric.
Sure. You know, always kind of intimidated by sewing, but once you sit down and do it, it's not awful.
A lot of what I found with stitching like this is just being careful,
Sure.
being mindful, being aware of what you're doing.
And some patience as well, right?
Yeah. If you're paying attention, you can make sure that all your stitches are kind of aligned before you take it. Keep an eye on how far apart you're putting your stitches. It's not terribly hard, and especially with this, like I've said before, it's really forgiving. So even if your stitches are messy, it's okay, because they're not really going to show.
Yeah.
I'm starting to pull mine tight as I go, since my thread's not very long.
I don't know if you know the answer to this question, and that's entirely fine. If you find yourself to get into sewing more, what's a good way to find others that are into it, kind of the same interest groups? Resources for finding others?
I like to go on YouTube.
Okay.
There are a lot of sewers who film themselves sewing, and they put out patterns and tips and tricks. That's where I learned how to do this particular type of plushie making, because I found YouTube videos about it, and it looked easy and fun. So
I can see this being real relaxing if you just throw on some music and just kind of just hang out. Maybe you have like a video up or something and watch. I don't know how much focus and attention it requires.
Not very much. It depends on how careful you want to be.
Sure.
Okay, so I'm back around to the start.
Yep,
so
same.
I'm going to start pulling it tight. Before you pull it all the way tight, you can start tucking in those raw edges.
Oh.
And so as you pull it tight, it'll seal all of those edges inside.
Giving it a much cleaner look. Okay.
So once you've got it nice and tight, you're going to want to hold it taut.
Yeah.
And then take a couple of stitches, go to the other side of the hole, put a stitch in, across to the other side, and back out. And that'll help do that a couple of times from different directions. So in from this side, out the other side.
Got it.
And that'll help just secure everything in place.
Okay.
Okay.
We'll do one more just for safety's sake.
Okay.
Nice. All right.
All right. So then what I would do is take a little bit of fabric, a little bit, to put your needle through, and then do the same thing. Go back through the loop to make a knot.
Sure. Kind of anchor it in place. Okay.
And keep it from coming undone.
Do that once or twice?
Twice to be safe.
Okay.
More times if you really want it to be secure. And then we'll trim it. I'm not too worried about the ends of my thread sticking out here, because we're going to attach the head to the top, and that'll cover up that opening there. Particularly if it looks rough, don't worry too much about the top of the body, because that's where the head's going to go.
Okay.
Squishy. I would put you out in the living room, but I think you would get in trouble.
That's fine.
Why don't we close the door? Because then do you think we can do that?
Yeah.
Just because that one is instigating. You think you have room?
Yeah.
Change the view a little bit for people.
Yeah. People won't notice the continuity change.
Okay. So you can kind of see where I'm like squishing the body around and it changes the shape a little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, got my body going. This is a pretty generic body. This could be a bear or a cat or a snowman. Mine's white. It could be a snowman. Could be Olaf, maybe.
Yeah.
All right. And then you'll need your other sock.
Okay.
So now we're going to make a head for it. So
Sure.
turn your sock inside out.
Oh, right. Yeah.
In my case, I'm going to have to decide how I want the head to go. What I would do for you... Yep. So from here, what I would do is draw a line so that you have kind of an oval shape.
Sure.
Or maybe it would be easier. No, I think it would be easier. Okay, what we're going to do instead is we're going to stuff the end of the sock until we have a ball head shape that we're happy with.
Sure.
That'll be easier.
Okay.
Other ways to make a head are to draw a curved shape here and sew it, and then leave a small opening where you can stuff it. Mm-hmm. But I think the easiest way to go about this is just to stuff the end of the sock until you have a ball about the size that you want the head to be.
Sure. Guessing it's kind of be in proportion with the body or whatever.
If you want it to be oversized, that's fine.
Yeah.
Oh, actually, why don't you turn your sock inside out so the seam's on the inside? Since we're going to stuff it right away.
Gotcha.
Let's start with the seam on the inside. You want a nice big ball. I'm probably going overboard. That's okay. It squishes down a lot. For me, the color of my sock is going to change the way my head looks. But I think that'll be okay.
Because you have that toe on there.
Yeah, because I have the colored toe. What I think I might do is turn it sideways when I'm done, and this might be a muzzle.
Yeah.
Like a horse. Could be a horse shape. So.
Okay.
If it's a size you're happy with.
I think so.
So if I turn mine sideways. Like that. Okay. So what we're going to do is the same thing we did to close the top of the body. You'll want to cut off your excess. I'm going to cut mine, I think, just below the heel here. I will need more thread. This won't be enough.
You think this could be enough, maybe?
Yeah, I think that might be enough. Bigger needles like the one I'm using will work pretty well for this craft. But if you're using socks with a tighter weave, it probably won't.
Okay.
The one you're using might be a bit small because it might be a little bit harder to find it through all of the fluff.
Yeah.
Make a knot in the end of mine. This one will be a little bit more important for me to hide my thread while I'm working. Whereas for you, you'll be able to turn that seam upside down and sew it to the body. So
Sure.
you won't have to worry as much about it being neat. So I'm going to go from the inside out.
So we're doing the kind of the coin purse thing where you...
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Go through the loop of... Separate my strands like this. Then go through that loop so that I can secure it nicely. And then I'm going to go back and forth. Like we did on the body. if you're fancy and want to save time,
I do like fancy.
you can do multiple stitches at once. So in, out,
Whoa.
in, and out.
That is some next
So
level
I've got
stuff
a couple
right there.
and pull it through. For this, where we're going on pretty simple stitches, and they don't have to be very close together,
Yeah.
it's a pretty quick way to go about it.
Okay. Yeah, I'm going to tuck in all this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
There we go, like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And with like that one,
Let me
we...
see. There you go. Now pull it tight. Make sure everything's real well tucked in. There's a little bit that came out. There you go. Get back around to my starting point. And then just take a couple of stitches across to make sure you got everything nice and secure. I'm going to be a little bit more careful about tucking everything in on mine. She's always so tired.
Being a dog is pretty exhausting. Neat.
Okay, now that I'm at the end, I'm going to slip through the loop, nice and tight. Through the loop again. Oop. Now, something I'm going to do that you don't have to worry about too much right now is hiding my thread inside of my plush so that it doesn't, you know, when you trim it, you don't have that little tail sticking up.
Sure.
So if you go in near where your thread is, you can squish your plush and let your needle come out the other side.
Okay. Oh, I see.
So when you trim it off
And you fold it back
and let
up.
go, it'll disappear inside your plush.
That is very clever.
And then you don't see any little tails from your thread.
Well, I wish I had done that before, but I don't see any of my threads. So
It won't matter too much. You can take this end and put it down on top of your body and it'll hide everything. Yep, just like that. Okay, I'm going to put mine on.
Now we got something kind of coming together here.
Yeah. See, I'm rolling my head a little bit to get it more football shaped. And I'm going to attach that, I think.
Like Arnold.
He looks a little bit like Arnold.
That's a 90s throwback right there.
Depending on, you know, what you want. If you want a nice round head. Okay, so then we're going to attach the head to the body.
Okay.
So you're going to need a decent amount of thread for this.
Uh-oh.
So I would go with the 2 foot again, I think.
Okay. Like
Doubled
we did
over.
with the legs?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I'm going to knot mine because I still have a bit left over.
Okay. You know how rewarding it is to thread the eye?
Thread the needle?
Yes, I'm sorry. For someone that doesn't sew often.
It sounds like a gaming term.
Thread the needle?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, actually. Teamwork. Thank you. Let me use this. While I'm doing this, if people have any questions, because since this is pre-recorded, we won't have much of a Q&A section. If people have any questions for you, you'll likely be in the Discord, correct?
Yes.
What's your username on Discord?
Whimsical Blue.
Gotcha. Now, there likely will be a panel room text channel in Discord for this panel. So if you guys want to hop in there and ask any questions or maybe work with others and come up with ideas. Cool.
Okay. So, you kind of want to decide where you want your head to sit. If you want it to sit farther back on the body or farther forward, if they're slumping, kind of just decide where you want it to be. If it's more centered, you might have more ability for it not to fall over.
Yeah, I was about to say, this is a good point to kind of figure out where your balance will be for the center.
Right. I'm going to stick mine kind of right in the center. And you'll have to probably just hold it unless you happen to be lucky enough to have a needle that you can, or a pin that you can put from the top all the way through in the body.
Sure.
But I don't think most of us have pins that are that
pretty long.
That long.
Yeah.
So we're going to start down here by the seam between the two, way down here where it'll be hidden.
Yeah.
And just take a very small stitch in one and secure your thread like we've been doing this whole time. Oh, see, I pulled it all the way through and my knot came out.
Uh-oh.
But
pretty forgiving just to go back around and again. Okay.
Secure my thread. Okay. So the next stitch we're going to do is called a ladder stitch.
We're already in so many stitches today.
So the way this one works is you're going to go straight across to the other side, take a stitch, go in, over, and back out.
Okay.
Like that. Okay, so you take a stitch forward and pull it. And then go straight across to the other side, in, and over, and out.
Gotcha. So you're kind of hooking it around and bringing it out.
Yeah. So it makes this, this shape here, where it's going across. And this way, when we're all done, we'll pull it nice and tight, and it'll close everything up together.
Got it.
The best way to make this be invisible is to have your stitches directly across on the other side. And you don't have to worry too much about getting it pulled tight right away, because you can pull it tight.
Something happened here.
Did you get a knot?
Yeah, I think so. Oh, just rinse and repeat. Don't lose this needle.
So, I probably should have gone around the other direction. It'd be a little bit easier for me. Keep wanting to go this way. I think I'll jump to the other side and go back the other direction. Be a little bit easier for me to hold it that way. Now, it's worth noting that how deeply you go between, how close you go between them will kind of affect how your head sits on your body.
Sure.
If you go, say, really far out to take your stitches, kind of like I'm doing, it'll pull the edges together and the seam won't be as noticeable.
Sure.
But if you went really far down between and took little bitty stitches, I think the head would sit more on top of the body and would look more separate.
Okay.
If you get all the way around and your head looks like it's attached too flimsy, like it's not attached well enough, you can make another circle all the way around, just put your stitches a little bit farther out from the first ones. It's also a good way to make sure your head's really secure, is if you go around it twice. It also lets you change kind of the way the head is sitting. If you don't like the direction it's pointing, you can add a couple more stitches in one direction to pull it down and get it to face a different direction if you want.
Sure.
So, I've gone all the way around. So now we check and see how we like the way our plush is sitting. I like the way that looks. I think it's attached nicely. So I'm going to make a little knot, just like I did before.
Mm-hmm.
Go through the loop. Pull it nice and tight. And then, like I did with the back of the head, I'm going to go into the body and out through the back just to hide my thread. There we go. You can see it a little bit, but if I were using the same white thread, you wouldn't see it at all. He's a bit top-heavy. Might be able to get him to sit. Maybe. Maybe not.
Actually, I'm going to do what you did.
Go a little bit further out or hide it.
Hide it. My initial thread is still visible here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, these ones are kind of hard to get them to sit upright. Unless you make the body real fat and the head pretty small.
Now, could it be a trick to put some weight in the bottom before?
If you want to.
Like if you maybe you like sew like a little like sack of rice or something, maybe.
Yeah, you could do that. You could, as you're stuffing it, put a little sack of rice. I would probably get some fabric and sew a little pouch or something so that it doesn't come out.
Sure.
This fabric is loose enough that I think rice would just pour out of it. So these wouldn't make very good bean bags unless you had the beans inside of something inside of it. But yeah, you could definitely do that. Okay, so what we'll do next, if you want it really simple, you don't have to add arms.
Sure.
We may do that, but I think what we'll do first is add ears.
Sure.
Do you want ears on yours?
I'll probably skip the ears. We're actually, time flies when you are having fun. It's 58 minutes.
Ooh.
But, I mean, we can go over a little bit, but...
Some things to go over.
Yeah.
If you want to customize this into some kind of animal, right?
Sure.
So with these scrap pieces, if you wanted, say, a cat, get some little triangle ears here.
Sure.
Like this. So then you would back stitch along this, just like you did with the legs, and then cut it out, turn it inside out, and you can sew these bottom edges to the top of your animal. You can stuff them if you want.
Okay, I was about to ask. Sometimes, since ears are thin, you don't have to stuff it. Okay.
Right. If you wanted bear ears that were really thick and round, you could stuff them before you attach them.
Okay.
This is the same way that we would do, say, arms.
Sure.
We would trace an arm shape, just around, and then sew it right on the side with the ladder stitch like I showed for the head.
Okay.
It's the same for the tail. If you want a big old fox tail, draw that out, sew it on, and you've got a fox.
Gotcha. Now, if you wanted to do like a raccoon or something, you probably could get creative with like the striping and do different colors, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep. There's lots of different ways to do this. If you want to, say, add a muzzle to yours, you could take a round piece of fabric, like the heel here, cut out a circle, and then use the ladder stitch to sew around the edge, and then stuff a little bit of stuffing in there, and it would stand out like a muzzle.
Gotcha.
Got fuzzies all over yours.
It's fine.
Okay. Other things. Buttons make great eyes.
Sure.
So you can sew buttons on there. Otherwise, if you have a marker, I might just use the blue one, you can add eyes. That. Other side.
It's surprising how just adding just eyes on with marker really adds, and now you can actually see, like, I like how like you did the toe color. That does look like the front of the face. It just kind of.
So, you can also do mouths this way. Have a little smile on it. I've added markings that way. You only have to be careful because sometimes markers are smelly. So if you put a bunch of marker on here, it might make for a smelly plush.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's basics for making really simple plushes out of budget materials.
Great. And I'm sure taking the same methods everyone learned here, you can do things beyond a sock. If people were really feeling creative, if they maybe wanted to do something else. I'm not sure. Maybe an old shirt or something.
The only thing with that is that you'll have a seam down the side since they aren't usually tubes.
That's right, yeah.
The socks have the nice tubes, so you get a nice round body. But you could do the same thing by taking a long rectangle and sewing down the side so you have a tube.
Sure.
And then you could do that for making the body like that.
Gotcha. Very cool.
Yeah.
Great. Well, thanks for taking the time to show us how to do this. For those that are watching live, hop in the Discord, type a little bit in the text channel, maybe do it later. And like I said before, it's going to be on YouTube, so if you want to follow along with me and Blue, it'll be on YouTube as well. Hope you guys enjoy the rest of the con. Later.
Yeah. Bye.
Neat. If I had more time, it would be cool to add like ears and a tail.
That's why I have the workshops be like 3 hours.
Yeah. It was tricky with our schedule where there's not a ton of time.